Hello again. Now, up here on the North Norfolk coast has been a famous centre for wildfowlers for many, many generations. Wildfowlers are those rather eccentric types who go after wild duck and wild geese. And they're always imagined to spend their time up to their necks in water and lying in mud, getting frozen stiff and cold. Now, why the blazes do they do this? Why don't they go out in the daytime like anybody else in comparative comfort? Well, the answer, of course, lies in the habits of wild duck. And the first thing about them is that they feed at night. Let's say they're nocturnal in their feeding habits, to use the correct phrase, and they sleep and rest in the daytime. The other thing about them is that they don't feed or rest in the same place. In other words, every night they go from A to B, and that may be several miles, and in the morning they go back from B to A. And so what the wildfowlers are trying to do is to intercept them on this flight line, and that's known as flighting. Well, now, as it's always at dawn or at dusk, of course it's likely to be either in the half-light or in the dark. And to tell you and explain more about it, I'm going to go down to the marshes now and look at some of the places where these duck rest and feed. So off we go. There are many villages around the coast of Britain where the local history is coloured by a sort of romantic overtone of wildfowling. Blakeney is certainly one of them. For centuries, the local community has combined the business of securing food with the pleasure of outwitting the wild on the bleak and lonely salt marshes. And wildfowling, too, has always stirred the spirit of the more hardy and imaginative sportsmen. Village history is full of legendary figures whose feats with a gun have certainly lost nothing in the telling. The graves of many great wildfowling characters are in the churchyard here, in sight of the estuary they knew and loved so well. Blakeney and its neighbouring village, Cly, are also popular bases for bird watchers, and the arrival of migrating birds is watched with almost fanatical attention. Bird recognition, the actual identifying of each species, is almost a religion here. Most people would apparently rather distinguish half a dozen new arrivals than stop to study the habits of one. It's staggering, for instance, how little we know about the behavior of the ordinary wild duck. Whoops! We very nearly wrote off a very well-known local birdwatcher, Mrs. Micklejohn. The business of flighting to their feeding grounds, for example, it's easy enough bowling along like this in a car. But I wonder how you'd get on if you tried to find a small pond in the dark several miles away, with no roads, no signposts, no map, and no directions from anyone as to how to get there. Yet the duck glides straight in, even if it's never been there before. Duck can't see much better than we can in the dark, yet on the blackest night they don't hit branches or other obstacles when coming in, and they know exactly when they'll hit the water, even when they can't see it. Billy Bishop is the official warden of all the marshes at Cly. This is the sort of place that duck like to feed in at night. You've seen tame ducks standing on their heads, so to speak, in order to feed on the bottom of their pond. Well, wild duck do the same thing. They like to dibble about on the bottom and so they make for shallow water. The duck come in as dusk falls and depart before sunrise, so you might never see them at their night haunts, but you can always tell if they've been in. After feeding, they like to preen their feathers, and there's plenty of evidence left about the place. Next morning, the water is usually stirred up and cloudy, and pondweed and other aquatic plants are torn up and bits left floating on the surface. Even if you have never actually seen a duck on a piece of water, it's not difficult to tell if they've been feeding there, and even to estimate the number using the place by noting all the telltale signs. Dusk is the exciting hour for wildfowlers. Then the air is filled with the sound of whistling wings, and the evening sky comes to life with twisting, swooping forms. There is something almost mystical about this strange impulse which makes duck move to another place as the light fades. Billy, why do you think it is that wild duck don't rest and feed in the same place?
Well, to be quite frank, sir, I don't know. I've often wondered and never been able to find out.
Do you think it's that they have some sort of instinctive impulse to flight at dusk?
I think so, yes. They all seem to flight to different areas somewhere.
But it is true that if they're resting in a particular place and you then start to feed that place with corn, then they leave it in the daytime and only come back at night.
That is exactly what happens.
But it's a rather odd thing, isn't it?
It is, definitely. I've never been able to find that out, ever.
For a good resting place, what do you reckon is the most important thing if you want to have duck in the area?
It must be kept absolutely quiet.
And not disturbed
Not
at all.
disturbed in any way.
And of course that's one of the reasons why there's so much fewer duck round the coast, I suppose, than there used to be.
I think so, yes.
Well, let's go and look at this resting place down by the shore. This is the sort of place which duck like in the daytime, a large, open stretch of water. For resting and sleeping, naturally enough, they like peace and quiet. They find these either in thick reeds and sheltered ponds, or well away from disturbance on lakes and waterways. They leave their feeding grounds as dawn breaks and wing their way back to their daylight sleeping quarters. Here's another favorite haunt, a lake in a quiet parkland. And there's a nice bunch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, shoveler, And you can see the drake shoveler up in the front. And some pintail drakes sitting on the bank. And that's a scorp, one of the diving ducks, which comes south in the winter. And of course the Broads and big reservoirs are very popular resting places as well. On this Broad, the camera was lucky to catch an old bittern stalking along the edge of the reed bed. He's probably looking for an eel or a frog. Here, large numbers of coots and swans help to swell the crowd in winter. The ducks spend the day here in big packs, and then every evening, just about when you decide to draw your curtains, off they go in small parties to countless sort of duck cafes and pubs all over the area. There's a nice party of pintail. Of course, it's on the sea coast that the true wildfowler finds his paradise. Half the thrill is to be alone in a lonely place, to hear the distant roar of the sea, the wild cries of curlews and herring gulls, and to enjoy the delicious smells of tidal mud and seaweed. There's a nice little teal, two drakes swimming together. And now some shoveler. A gentleman's party. On the coast, duck rest wherever they're undisturbed on the saltings and estuaries. And then they fly off to feed at night. There are some variations in this routine, depending on the tide and the moon and the weather, particularly in the case of that lovely bird, the widgeon. That's a single shell duck. And there are those lovely widgeon, cream-colored crowns, and a lovely whistle. More shell duck. And a flock of curlew on the tideway. A mixed pack of waders, mostly curlew. In winter, eider duck sometimes come south and can be seen in the estuary. A nice view of them passing Blakeney Church. And there's the best of the lot, some more widgeon. Well, I hope you've enjoyed another trip to the coast. And hearing about those eccentric wildfowlers, I may say I'm one of them. Before the war, you know, wildfowl were getting rather scarce in this country. But now there's a series of refuges all around the coast, and things are very much better. Having talked all about wildfowl, Billy Bishop and I are now going to play ducks and drakes. Goodbye.